What's going on, everybody? This is Catfish on Ice. Welcome in. Hope you're having a good night. This is your host, Chad Minton, with Kyle Perkins, and we are bringing you a brand new episode here. Kyle, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Oh, hey, it's always a good time when we get to talk about a Predators win. And you know what? This team keeps sending us these mixed emotions, these mixed vibes. We don't know whether to write them off, whether to buy the Kool-Aid, if you will. Kyle, are you buying the Kool-Aid right now, my man? Like,
sorta. It depends on the day. It depends on what team we're watching.
Wait a minute. You can't sorta buy the Kool-Aid. You're either going to buy the Kool-Aid or you're not going to buy it.
So I got to go either full Jim Jones or nothing.
Yeah, this team is so hard to figure out, man. They're fickle. That's the word I'm stuck on, fickle. They're fickle. They know how to toil with your emotions right now. They're toying with mine. And we're about to talk about it here in the opening face-off of Catfish on Ice, presented by DraftKings, part of the Hockey Podcast Network. Thank you for joining on YouTube if you are right now. Thank you for watching on Twitter. Follow us at Catfish Ice if you could. We're about to do an opening face-off segment here tonight, talking about the top 5 most impressive wins that the Predators have this current season. And I would argue, and we will talk about it, we'll get Kyle's opinion on this. We're going to talk about this. Is the win over the Winnipeg Jets last night one of their most impressive wins in the season? Would you put it in the top 5 of the most impressive wins that the Predators have had this season? We have passed the midway point of this season. The Predators are 3 points out of a playoff spot. So they're kind of right around where a lot of people probably expected them to be, despite all of their flaws. So we have to talk about this. We have to get into it and break it down. Let's look at some of their most impressive wins that they've had this season. I would say that this win over the Jets last night is one of their most impressive.
I'd have to agree. That was a scrappy little game.
Very scrappy. Absolutely. And then we are going to look ahead into 2023, this offseason, and even go even further out to 2024 and look at – we're going to put our front office GM hats on tonight. I know GM David Poile gets all of this criticism all the time. He never gets away from it. All the fans want him gone. We are going to put ourselves in his shoes and look at some of these contracts this coming up offseason and even into 2024. Will these players stick around? Will they be re-signed? What do we think is going to happen? We can even talk about trades. We'll have to get into all of that, of course. And then we've also got to talk about this Alexander Carrier stuff here. He went into – hey, Kyle, this guy never fights. He stood up for our boy Cody Glass. He went in there and took on a fight that he probably was outmatched on.
Oh, it wasn't probably. That was David and Goliath, and he didn't have no slingshot.
Yeah. So
he got handled pretty good, but props to him for trying.
Cody Glass gave him some love in his post-game interview with Emma Lingen and all the great work that the Predators website does for us. And, Cody Glass was like, you know what? I really appreciate him sticking up for me, basically. So you love to see the camaraderie of the locker room. I thought it was a legal hit.
It was legal. I mean, but I can understand why he took offense to it too. You got to stand up for your guys. But then again, you don't want to take an injury on a fight, then you're not especially when you're not a fighter. If you're not like, I could understand it if Ekholm had went over and started throwing hands. Ekholm's a big boy. Carrier is not. He is not built like a fighter.
No.
That's his first fighting penalty ever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's weird. And we are going to wrap up the episode with some quick hitters. We got some good ones. We got 2 good ones tonight. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite sports commissioner, Gary Bettman. He is a master of making things seem better than they are. So we'll talk about him. I've always called Gary Bettman the best used car salesman that's a commissioner of a sports league. Is that fair?
Yeah.
He'd be a hell of a used car salesman.
That guy's selling you a 78 Pinto, and that's all there is to it.
He would make a 2002 Dodge Stratus look like a Camaro.
Oh, man.
So Gary Bettman's back in the news. We'll talk about what he said about tanking in the NHL. And then we also will fit in another quick hitter along the way. So let's get into it. Episode 169. We got some comments rolling in. We got Mike Twitter jumping in. He says, yo. What's up?
What's up, Mike?
He says, Predators, multiple wins. Yeah, that's what they are. They are a roller coaster, as we know. Up and down we go. Up and down we go. Justin Gambino, what's up, man? We missed Justin in the last episode. We're happy we have him back here tonight. We love you, Justin. He says, because of the fickleness, I don't know if I've ever said that word in my life, I'm not on the Kool-Aid.
Fair.
That's one of the best sentences I've ever read in my life. Because of the fickleness, I'm not on the Kool-Aid. If that's one way to describe this Nashville Predators team in 2022-23, it is that sentence right there that our good friend Justin Gambino just spoke.
That kind of like the Disturbed song, Down with the Fickleness? I mean...
Down with the fickleness.
I'm sorry, I had to.
But that is honestly a great sentence to describe. Well, that's 2 sentences, I guess. Sorry, English majors out there. That's 2 sentences. Because of the fickleness, I'm not on the Kool-Aid. That is a great way to describe this Predators team right now. Thank you, Justin, because we're going to roll with that for the rest of this episode here, because that's awesome. All right, so let's talk about this. The Predators beat the Jets 2-1. The Predators, Kyle, are making a really good habit of winning these 2-1 games. That's their 3rd time in the last 5 games they've won by a 2-1 score. They beat the Blue Jackets 2-1. They beat the Calgary Flames 2-1. And also, if I might add, 4 of their last 5 wins have been over current playoff teams. No, I'm sorry, 3 of their last 5 wins. 3 of their last 5 wins have been over current playoff teams: Calgary, LA, and Winnipeg. Kyle, how are you feeling out after this this very gutsy win over Winnipeg? I think it's one of their most impressive wins of the season. We're about to talk about some of the most impressive wins we think we've had. But just overall, Kyle, what did you see from this game, man?
I mean, I really didn't have a lot to complain about. UC played well. The penalty kill I thought was excellent. Just guys doing their jobs for the most part. Let's see.
Well, like you said, man, doing your job is a big part of it. And I think that a team built like the Predators, they're not one of those prototypical, highly talented teams that can just ride on their superstars and be okay. They can neutralize all their deficiencies. No, the Predators are one of those types of teams where everyone has to pull the rope. Everyone. I know that sounds so corny, but it's true. Everyone has to pull the rope. And so when you have your 4th line guys, your 3rd line guys, your bottom pairing defensemen, your goalies, everybody, when everybody is doing their job and performing at a high level, yeah, this Predators team can beat teams like the Jets. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what we saw in this game is that everybody did their job. Everybody came to work and clocked in and put it together a good shift for all of us blue-collar people who go and clock in and work a full shift. That's what these guys did. They all clocked in and did their jobs, and they got a winning result.
Just a solid top to bottom effort. Pretty much every line played decently well. The team played really well down a defenseman. I think that's a very big deal that they were able to keep up with Winnipeg after losing Carrier like they did. And just not a lot of issue at all, really, with the way the team played.
Yeah, I mean, they give up a goal in the first 60 seconds of the game, and you're automatically thinking, okay, this is going to be
again.
Here we go again. This is going to be a write-off because, the Predators they've done a good job this season of beating up on lesser teams.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at a lot of their wins, they've beaten some teams that are way lower in the standings. They don't have a ton of wins against really highly respected top-tier teams, if I might say.
Mm-hmm.
They have a few, and we're about to discuss some of those wins they do have. So when you see them fall behind 1-0 early in a game against a team like the Jets, that automatically makes you think, okay, this is going to be one of those games where the Preds get exposed. Because that goal by the Jets was very meticulous. They diagrammed it. It was another situation where the Predators could not get out of their own zone. They turned the puck over. Saros was kind of left out to dry. Yeah, you can argue that maybe he could have made that save. I'm not saying it was the most difficult save to make in the world, but it was a product of turning the puck over by the Predators in front of Saros, and he just couldn't make the saves. He couldn't make the save. He couldn't recover. So you find yourself down 1-0. What's so impressive about this game is the Predators showed resiliency. They put that goal aside. They said, you know what? We have a whole game to play here. And that's what championship teams do is those things are going to happen. It's hockey. These things are going to happen. And quirky things are going to happen. You're going to have some mistakes. You're going to have some giveaways in the zone. It happens early in a game like that. I would venture to say that you would rather it happen at that early point in the game than for that to happen late in a game because you have time to recover. Is that kind of what you saw?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You never want to have that goal that shouldn't have been let in happen in the first or in the last 2 minutes of a game. And how many times has Nashville done that so far this year where they've let that goal in at the very end of the game, and we're all sitting here going, no, you were so close.
It happened in the Dallas game, man.
Oh, yeah.
So the Preds are 0-3 against Dallas this year. In that last game, they were going toe-to-toe with that team, who I think is, the best team in the division, obviously.
Yeah.
And they give up a goal in the last waning moments of the game, and they don't even get out of that game with a point. So they're 0-3-0 against the Dallas Stars this year. And so when you see, you're way more okay with seeing a goal like that given up in the first 60 seconds of the game than the last 60 seconds of the game. And so, you're okay with it. You can live with it.
Yeah, I think if it happens in that first minute, you're like, oh, we got to tighten up. All right, let's get our heads on. We got an hour of hockey left. We can still come through this. Not panic time yet.
Yeah.
So
the Predators are 5-6-3 against the Central Division this year. So very mediocre. I'm talking doesn't look good on the surface, right? 5-6-3 against Central Division teams. 6 of those 9 losses are to Colorado and Dallas.
Two pretty decent teams.
Even
with Colorado being depleted.
And 3 of the last 4 wins for the Predators are against teams in a current playoff spot. So we are seeing a positive trend here in terms of we are actually seeing the Predators beat legitimately good teams. And that is a positive sign when we're thinking about, okay, I think a big reason why Preds fans have a hard time getting excited about this team, especially the fans of this team. All right, so first of all, I'm wearing my old school tattered Nashville Predators shirt that I've had. It's probably from Goodwill. I don't know where it came from. I really don't. Like, this thing is so nasty and tattered. It's got the old school Prez logo on the sleeve. I mean, this thing is so beat up and nasty. I don't care. I'm wearing it when I feel desperate. And I feel desperate tonight, my man, because I think the old school Predators fans can appreciate this. We have followed this team for so long. And when the team first came about, it was all about making the playoffs and just letting everyone know we're here. Like, we're here. We're a good team. Hockey can thrive in the South. We're here. Well, obviously, it's not about that anymore. Now it's more than that. Now we've got to show people, no, we can actually win a Stanley Cup. That's why fans are so upset, because most fans do not think that this team can win a Stanley Cup. And I totally understand that. So beating some of these playoff teams right now is actually a pretty big deal. Do you agree with me, man?
I do agree. It's, if you can beat some of the teams that you're going to be in the playoffs with, at least be competitive with, because I think we've went past, we talked about this last year. Is it okay enough just to make the playoffs? It's not. And I'm not one of these people that's going to sit here and be like, we need to just stink it up, tank, whatever.
Well, Gary Bettman says there's no tanking, Kyle. So
Gary Bettman also says there's no CTE.
Yeah.
But anyways,
yeah. We'll discuss that a little bit later.
I'm not saying they need to tank or anything, but if they're not going to make the playoffs, picking 8th or 7th is better than picking 16th or 17th. That's a whole nother different class of player you're moving into if you're picking top 10 versus 6 or 7 more spots down the line.
Yeah. I mean, here's where I'm at with it. You always want your team to win. I will never understand a fan rooting for their team to lose, thinking about draft picks here. Drafting is not a perfect science in any sport. You can find gems of a draft class in a 3rd round, in a 4th round. Now, of course, Connor Bedard is going to be projected as a generational Connor McDavid type of talent. I get it. The dude is electric. You watch his highlight reel right now, and he is literally looks like he's on a video game. I couldn't even do what he does on a video game. Like, he's that good. He's that good. I get it. And whoever is lucky enough to draft him number 1 overall is, yeah, that's going to be a great boost for that franchise. But to just argue about a lottery and wanting your team to lose so you can have a chance at picking Connor Bedard is just a loser's mentality. I will never buy into that. I know that some fans want that because they want this team to rebuild, and a lot of fans want the Predators to lose because that will give the front office an excuse to fire John Hines, and then more importantly, that will give ownership to move on firing David Poile. I get all of that. I would like a fresh change as well, but I'm never going to root for this team to lose. And when I see them beat teams like Winnipeg, like they did last night, and when I see them put everything on the line and come together as a full team, it makes you happy to be a Predators fan, and it makes you really proud, and it keeps you coming back. Like, you know, yeah. I kind of make the analogy to, I don't know who played, you know, like I'm a very average golf player. Like, I suck at golf, but I love playing. And you know why I love playing golf? Because whenever I get that one good shot that lands on the green, and I watch that golf ball go up in there, and I watch it land on the green near the hole, and it makes me feel like I'm a good golf player. It keeps me coming back to that golf course. I make that analogy to this Predators team. They give me so much heartbreak when they lose some of these games and they underperform. But when they give me games like they did against the Winnipeg Jets last night, it keeps me coming back. And I want to see this team reach its full potential. And they have not even come close to reaching their full potential yet.
Oh, no. You look at the year that Duchesne had, which he's been pretty good as of late, but Forsberg hasn't had a year like what he would want to have. I would say Yossi would say he's not had a year like he would want to have so far. So it's not been ideal for the team when it comes to their best players having years they're proud of. So there's a lot more potential to be unlocked. It's just, how do we get to that?
Exactly. So let's break down this Jets game here. I thought it was one of the better defensive performances that the Predators have had all season. I know they gave up the early goal, but from that point on, it was one of the better performances in terms of protecting UC Saros, giving him the open ice to make the easier save. You saw guys out there with great defensive structure. The Jets power play goes 0 for 3. What were some of the things you saw, Kyle, when it comes to the Predators actually having a really good defensive game? You know, the Jets came in top 10 in goals scored per game. So the Jets, you know, they know how to put the goals on the board. So the Predators rose up to the challenge in that regard.
I think they really did. The pairing with Yossi and McDonough is just so good. That actually, and I'm not even going to just limit it to those two. The top two pairings are so good. And you know what? I know a lot of people don't like him. I really like Jeremy Lauzon, but he's a third pair defenseman. But you know what? He is a good third pair defenseman. He does that job well. He kills penalties. He's going to stand in front of anything that gets shot at him. He's going to stand up for his teammates. He's going to do all those third pairing defenseman things that we know and love. So I will beat his drum a little bit and say he's the last few games. I think the Winnipeg game was probably his best game he's played. But
he took one bad tripping penalty in that game, but towards the end of the second period. But those things are going to happen, especially with a player who plays like he does. But we've mentioned this in the last couple episodes. We'll mention it again. I think that Lauzon brings a lot more positive than he does negative. And he does bring some negatives. He does commit some bad penalties. But let's circle around to this then. And we've also talked about this, and this trend continues. The Predators' penalty kill is showing that it can be relied upon to come up in clutch moments when it needs to.
Yes. I think that's one of the biggest differences from the penalty kill we've had the last few years. I remember, was it the COVID year when Dallas lit us up every time we
played them for sure, yeah. Well, even last season, the Predators were one of the worst penalty kills in the league.
Oh, yeah, it was embarrassing. It was painful to watch. And then this year, it's like, I'm not terrified on the PK. A team like Carolina, that's one thing.
There's certain teams, yeah.
Against Winnipeg, it wasn't near as –
they couldn't find anything. They couldn't even get a shot on goal on Saros. That was the beauty of it. It's one thing when you kill a penalty off because Saros had to make like 4 or 5 really like ridiculous saves, but you were still like hanging on by a thread. That's one thing. It's another thing when you watch the penalty kill actually suffocate the power play to the point where they can't even find a shooting lane.
that is just the beauty of a good.
And that's what happened. That's what happened against the Jets. The Preds penalty kill came out and built a shell, built a wall around Saros. And really, Saros only had to make maybe, I know on Natural Stat Trick, I saw that the Jets got 4 shots on goal in their 3 power play attempts. 4 shots. And they only had a handful of shots in the second period. So I'm also starting to realize that the second period is really becoming the Predators' strong point. They know how to – they have been making some serious adjustments out of the first intermission lately.
And that has traditionally been where they're the weakest, is that second period. It used to be a whole talking point of the broadcasters was like, oh, here comes that second period. Are we going to get through it or are we not? And it's like, now it seems like they actually know what's going on. That it's.
So you look at this game right here.
Yeah.
Preds go into the first intermission. They're still down 1-0 after giving up that goal in the first 48 seconds. But I don't know if you agree with me, but watching this game and watching that first period play out, I actually felt a little encouraged in a weird way, even though they were down a goal. I felt really encouraged by how they responded to that and how they got to that first intermission only down a goal. And they really calmed things down. They said, because a 1-goal deficit, even for a team like the Predators, who they struggle to score, we know that. Even a team like the Predators, it's a 1-goal deficit, and you have a whole game to play. Let's forget that. It happened. It's bad. We made a mistake, whatever. Let's move on from it. They didn't let it compound into a 2 or 3 goal deficit, and that is a sign of progress for this team.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
Because mistakes are gonna happen, man. Even the best teams in this league make mistakes and they fall behind a goal. It happens. No one's perfect. So the fact that they responded from that meant a lot to me.
Same. It was because they could have very easily just laid down after that first goal and been like, "Oh, woe is me." God knows we've seen this team do it enough times over the last few years.
Yep.
Where they get down 1 early and it's just like, oh, the wheels have came completely off. Yeah. But
so Cody Glass responds and ties the game up. We're talking over halfway through the second period. So this was a 1-0 game in favor of Winnipeg from that early goal up until 13:49 of the second period. So, I mean, we're talking about the Predators. They had to work their tails off to get this game tied back up, man. The defense had to step up to keep this a 1-goal deficit. And I'm not taking anything away from Saros because he turned in another really good game, but we expect that from him. That's like one of those things where, oh yeah, what else would you expect? Of course, it's UC Saros. He's going to do that more times than not, almost every time out. He is not going to be the reason you lose. So that's to be expected. But the fact that second period, the Jets couldn't even find a shot on goal. They struggled to even get a shot on Saros. And I talked about this before the game. I sent a tweet out saying I was really worried that Saros was going to have to turn in another 40-save performance for the Predators to win this game. Now, pleasantly surprised and happily wrong I was, because the Predators, after that first period where they gave up 15 shots on goal, after that first period, the Predators, they hemmed in. They did not give the Jets any room to breathe, and they couldn't get any shots on goal. And that was the huge difference maker in the game, obviously. And obviously the penalty kill going 3 for 3 and not giving up a power play goal. Saros had a great game, but he didn't have that. He didn't have to have the spectacular game. He didn't have to. because the defense protected him.
I agree.
So Kyle, let's talk about the top 5 wins of the season. First of all, would you put this Jets win in your top 5?
I would, just because of how much of a fight it was from the start of the game to the end of the game. It was that was a 60-minute effort. The first period wasn't super great, but the rest of the game as a whole, I thought it was pretty awesome.
And it's a 60-minute game, everybody, and it comes in frames, and we all know this if you watch hockey on a regular basis. It comes at you in waves, and so just because a first period leans towards one team doesn't mean that the second period isn't going to drastically go the other way. It's almost like a boxing match. It's like it can go back and forth. That's why we love this sport. That's why we love hockey. So I'm going to throw. I also will put this win over the Jets in my top 5. So I got 4 other wins by the Predators this year that I would put in the top 5 with this win over the Jets last night. My number 1, we'll go in chronological order here. My number 1 win, or I'm not ranking these, I'm just putting them in the top 5 here. My first one I'm going to bring up here comes back on October 27th. Of last year. The Preds beat the Blues 6-2, ended a 5-game losing streak after coming back from Bern, Switzerland. All right, first of all, so the Preds beat the Sharks. For everyone who needs a refresher here, because time flies by and the season's flying by, for anyone who needs a refresher, it was an absolute nightmare coming back from Switzerland for the Predators. They could not find a way to win. The Dallas Stars completely embarrassed them for 2 games when they come back. They couldn't find a win. If anyone remembers the blown lead to the Columbus Blue Jackets at Columbus, that was one of those losses after they came back from Switzerland. And so the Preds desperately needed a win so badly. And they beat the Blues 6-2, ended a 5-game losing streak after coming back from Bern. I thought that was a really, really huge game to just
really was.
Just to stop the bleeding. Just to get back on track and calm everything down, because even that early in the season, you needed that win, especially against a team like the Blues, a team that's one of your rivals. So I gotta keep that in my top 5. I know it's early in the season, but that's a big one for me.
I have to agree 100%, because it was looking pretty grim whenever they came back from Bern.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man, what are they gonna do?
I mean, we look at these games. You lose to Dallas 4-1. You lose to Dallas again 5-1. Then you lose to the Kings 4-3. You lose to Columbus 5-3. That was that big debacle where they just gave up a late lead, and just the barn got blown out and they got beat by Columbus on the road. Then you lose to Philly, who has proven to not be a very good team this year, but might add you. They lose that game 3-1. So then they get 4 days off. And you're going into that St. Louis game and you're thinking, wow, this is going to get really out of hand really quick, and we just started the season. And granted, they turned around and lost again to Washington right after that, but I still think that's a really big win of the season, because that losing streak could have really stretched out if they didn't figure out a way to beat St. Louis in that game. So I got that in my list. Also, if you're watching live right now, or even if you're watching later, we want to hear your comments, and we want to tweet the show at Catfish Ice if you're listening later on Spotify or Apple or any of your podcast platforms, or if you're watching live right now. What are some of the biggest wins for the Preds this season, in your opinion? Tell us, and we will get with you. We got Omar in. He says, I think this was the most complete game they played start to finish. I think he's talking about definitely the win over the Jets, I would assume.
Yeah. And I agree 100%. 100%.
Mike Twitter jumps in and says, also that Blues game, Chad said if you want to make some money, bet against the Preds. All right. Yeah. I was wrong on that one. All right, let's move on to another one here on my list. How about November 12th, everybody? If you can remember that game against the New York Rangers. It was a 2-1 win. The Predators are making a really, really big habit of making these 2-1 wins. 2-1 win. Saros makes 34 saves. It was Juuso Parsonen's first NHL goal. If anyone remembers, that was his NHL debut. He scores early in that game.
And scores it on Shesterkin.
And I'm pretty sure when that goal happened, Kyle Perkins was somewhere like waving pom-poms and doing backflips.
I'm pretty sure I said I was going streaking.
Yeah, he was streaking somewhere through the streets of Kentucky somewhere, wearing it only his Parsonen jersey, nothing underneath,
I swear I would get one if I thought he was going to keep that number.
It was just a Parsonen jersey.
It was a Finland World Juniors jersey.
He was taking his inner Will Ferrell from old school. He was taking all that in. And he was saying, we're going streaking down to the quads because Juuso Parsons scored his first NHL goal. And to Kyle Perkins' credit, he called it. He's been beating the drum on Juuso Parsons all season, all offseason. Go back and listen to previous episodes. Go to our archive. Go to Spotify. Go to Apple. Go wherever you listen to your podcast. Listen to some of our off-season episodes. And I can promise you, Kyle Perkins talked about Juuso Parsons regularly. And so you're welcome for that.
Anytime anybody would ask, or even if they didn't.
There you go. All right, let's go to my next one. I was at this game. At the time, I called it a turning point win for the season. Might still be, but I would honestly say that maybe this win over Winnipeg will overtake that. But December 19th, they're facing Edmonton again, a team that just owns them. And the same Edmonton team that had just beaten them a week prior, a team that the Predators had lost like 9 straight to, something like that. And they come out and put together a very similar defensive performance that they did against Winnipeg last night. I will argue that Edmonton has a few more offensive playmakers than Winnipeg. But still,
1 or 2, maybe.
But still
decent guys.
Still a very, very strong defensive team effort against Winnipeg or against Edmonton on December 19th. Draisaitl was held to 0 points in this game. We all know how Draisaitl has owned the Predators franchise over the years.
And it was like Aaron Rodgers and the Packers to the Bears.
You didn't have to bring that up. I'm sorry, man. And then it was Tommy Novak's first game being called back, and he got a primary assist on that first goal in the game. So I got that in my top 5 of best wins of the season.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw one in here.
Yeah, throw one.
And then we're going to go back to December 1st, playing the New Jersey Devils, who at the time were the absolute hottest team in the league. That is when the Devils were absolutely wiping the floor with everybody.
And
they came out, played a really gutsy game, and won in overtime at New Jersey, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know how I left that game out, honestly.
But that game showed me whenever they have it in their head to play the way they can play with anybody.
Well, that's another example of this Preds team showing resiliency, because if you look at this game, they jumped out 2-0. I remember that game. Actually, now that I think about it, that was another juncture in the season where confidence was low in this team. And you got New Jersey rolling in, the hottest team in the league. And the Predators jump out to a 2-0 lead in the first period. And then the Devils storm back to take a 3-2 lead. And so at that time, you're thinking, in real time watching this game, you're thinking, okay, Predators gave their best effort, but the Devils are legit. They take the lead. They're up 3-2. This game's over. Nice try, Predators, but you're not in the same class. And what do you know? The Predators come back and win in overtime. Mikael Granlund scores a goal in this game. He actually scores the tying goal. Can we get more of that, please, Granny? Because you ain't living up to your contract right now, buddy. But he scored in that game, and then Ryan Johansson scores the overtime goal. Yeah, that's a great game, Kyle, that I left out on the list because that was a huge one. And Saros only had to make 25 saves in that game, so that was one of the rare games where Saros wasn't the primary reason why the Predators won. He actually had a pretty mediocre game by his standards in that game.
Yeah, that was still in the part of the seasons where he hadn't got his footing yet.
Yeah. That's a good one, man. I don't know how I left that one out. That might have to overtake the St. Louis game for me, honestly, because that's a pretty big one. Here's my next one. And it wasn't because the team as a whole played a great game, but it's just a matter of it's still a really impressive win, and you can't leave this one out because NHL history was kind of made in a way. How about UC Saros finishing tied for third for most saves in a single game in NHL history with 64 saves as the Predators beat the Hurricanes 5-3 on January 5th? I mean, you have to have that in your top five. You have to.
Yeah. Yep.
So Saros tied for the third highest saves in NHL history with 64, tying the well-known Joe Daly of 1970. Kyle, I know you have a Joe Daly jersey. Why aren't you wearing it tonight?
I know who John Daly is.
No, Joe Daly for the Boston Bruins.
Did he drink Miller Lite and smoke cigarettes while he was playing hockey?
Probably did. He probably did.
I mean, that era.
I'd be wearing my Joe Daly jersey tonight, but it's in the wash right now. I'm sorry, guys. I just happened to be washing it, and it's still drying right now, so I couldn't wear it for the episode. But Joe Daly is tied with UC Saros for third most saves in NHL history in a game with 64. Mad respect to Joe Daly, but we love Juice, and so we're going to put Juice a tad ahead of Joe Daly. Sorry, Joe. We're a little biased here, but
So I'm going to throw another one in, and this one wasn't even a win. So
okay. Oh, you're throwing a game out there they didn't even win?
Yes, because
Kyle's
I think
breaking the rules.
Yes, because I think it has a particular significance.
I like it. What is it?
And that would be I lost the date. Hold on. I'm finding it. Askarov's first game.
No, you're putting that as one of your top 5 games?
I will, just because of the future significance of it.
Okay, that's fair. I like it. It was a big deal for him. We talked about it in the last episode. We did our top 3 takeaways. We talked about it. I agree. I mean, it was huge for the kid. It was. I mean, he rounded out that game after a shaky start. He faced a lot of shots that weren't to his own fault. And
he kind of got held out to.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of a regular occurrence for anyone between the pipes for the Nashville Predators this season. I mean, I know they had a really great defensive game against the Jets, but more times than not this season, the Predators do not protect their goaltenders, and they have to rely on their goaltenders to carry them out. That's why they actually released it today. 2 of the top 10 goaltenders in this league right now in goals saved above expected are Predators goaltenders. So yeah, UC Saros and Kevin Lankinen. And Kevin Lankinen is a backup, and he is top 10 in goals saved above expected. How insane is that?
Kevin Lankinen's been the real deal. I mean,
the dude is top 10, and he is a spot backup goaltender.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. They absolutely pull the diamond in the rough on that one. That's all you could say about that.
Yeah. It's another reason I do have the Carolina game in my top 5 best wins for the Predators this season is not only did Saros have 64 saves, and They gave up a ton of shots on goal. The Hurricanes, I think, had like top 5 most shots on goal in a game in NHL history. So they were in their own history books, even though they ended up on the wrong end of it. But how about this? The Preds in that game, once again, you're seeing a common theme here with my list, showed resiliency. They came back from being down 1 goal 3 times in this game. So even though they didn't get a ton of shots on goal compared to the Hurricanes, they were down 1-0. They were down 2-1. They were down 3-2 in this game. They kept finding the tying goal. You got goals from Forsberg, Ekholm, Cody Glass, and then eventually Mark Jankowski, of all people, got the game winner.
I mean, Jankowski never really did anything that made me say, hey, he shouldn't be playing here.
He's a good penalty killer. He plays his role in the bottom 6 very well.
I'm all for guys that can play well and play their role well. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to put that in there because they found ways to keep tying the game. That game was so crazy, dude. I was on the edge of my seat, not even like exaggerating. I couldn't even sit down, actually. It wasn't even on the edge of the seat. I stood up watching this game the entire night. That was probably the most exciting, entertaining game they've had all season, and it helped that they actually won. So, but I put the Winnipeg game up there as well. So, again, the Predators get a huge win over the Jets. Again, let's go over what they're doing versus the Central Division. They're 5-6-3 against the Central Division. They are 1-0-1 against Winnipeg, 1-1-1 against St. Louis. They've already played 3 against St. Louis. They've only played 1 game against the Minnesota Wild, and I think that is important to mention because that is one of the teams that you better beat head-to-head if you're serious about this wild card and playoff race. You need to beat Minnesota head-to-head. So that's coming up. They got another game coming up against them in February. So they're 0-3-0 against Dallas. I mean, that's their kryptonite, man.
Dallas is just whew.
I would really be scared of Dallas sweeping the Predators in a 7-game series. I'm not going to even mince words about that.
Jason Robertson just he's a man. And then Ottinger.
When we talk about the Dallas Stars right now, and we're going to kind of talk about how we think the Central Division is going to end up shaping up. But if you're looking at the Dallas Stars right now in the regular season, the games they lose, these games are going to overtime. They've got 8 overtime losses. So it's a team that scares you in a 7-game playoff series because they know how to get to overtime at least. And guess what? In the playoffs, it's not 3 versus 3. You got to actually go out and win a game.
No skill contests.
Exactly. So I'm thinking that's a good sign if you're a Stars fan. If you're getting these games to overtime, even if you're losing in overtime, yeah, that's a little frustrating. But I'm feeling pretty good if I'm a Stars fan right now. The fact that they're getting to overtime and a lot of their losses are coming in overtime. They're not losing in regulation. So the Preds, they can't figure out the Stars. They're 0-3-0. They're 0-2-1 against Dallas. Against Colorado. I mentioned earlier that 6 of their 9 losses against Central Division teams are to Colorado and Dallas. They're 1-0-0 against Chicago, and they're 1-0-0 against Arizona. So shouldn't be too big of a shock there. So, yeah. Can the Predators start beating some of these top-tier, legitimate Central Division teams? Beating Winnipeg last night is a start.
You got to. If you're going to make the playoffs in any shape or fashion, these are the teams that you need to contend with. These are the teams you should have close games with. It shouldn't be Arizona and Anaheim that you're going to overtime with. It should be these guys.
Exactly. So it's a big step in the right direction. This is what's going to get fans back on the train, if you will, is when we start seeing this team beat legitimate teams. And I think Winnipeg's a legitimate team. I don't think that they're going to win the division. I see Winnipeg falling back to third or fourth place eventually, honestly. I think Colorado is on a train right now, and they're about to really surge up. So I can see
they just made a trade earlier today. So
yeah. So I mean, you're talking Dallas and Colorado is probably your top two teams, and then you've got a lot of other teams that are going to be battling with each other for spots 3 through 6. So I'm talking 4 teams right now. I'm talking Minnesota, Nashville, Winnipeg, and I mean those are your teams. In St. Louis. I mean, I know a lot of St. Louis fans are already ready to like throw this team into the sun. If you watch St. Louis fans mentions right now and you watch what they're thinking about the team right now, St. Louis fans are done with that team. But I still think they're going to stick around. So I'll throw them into that 4-team mix. And so the Preds are right there. They are. I mean, Winnipeg's good, but they haven't impressed me over the last couple weeks. So we'll see what happens.
I agree.
Do you think Dallas is your runaway front runner, Kyle?
I think at this point you don't have any choice but to say they are.
Yeah.
Just they're the class of the division. Just they may even be the class of the conference at this point.
They might be. And when you look at the Pacific Division right now, I mean, do you really trust Vegas? Do you really trust LA? I mean, do you really trust Seattle? It's hard to say who you trust out of the Pacific Division. But when you look at Dallas, and, you know, we've been saying this for a big part of the season on this show, they are a team that really does check all of the boxes as far as a Stanley Cup contending team. They really don't have any glaring weaknesses.
Yeah, they're pretty well set. I mean,
so how are you going to beat Dallas in a 4 out of 7 playoff series? That's what you have to think about at this point in the season. It's not about regular season anymore. I mean, it is in terms of the Predators because they're trying to make the playoffs. But like, if you're thinking about teams that are legitimately like front runners right now, who can actually beat Dallas 4 out of 7 in the Western Conference? Colorado at full strength is the only team I give a chance to. Colorado is my only team.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't give anyone in the Pacific Division a chance to beat Dallas 4 out of 7. No one in the Pacific Division.
No, nope. I don't think so. And as much as I love that Thompson out in Vegas is having a great season this year, it's hard to be that young and a rookie goalie and to come into the playoffs and be able to hold up through all that. Because if they play, they're not going to play in the first round. So,
Mike Twitter's giving us an NHL update right now. He says Stars are tied up with the Hurricanes right now. That's a pretty big game.
I mean, yeah, it's
2-2 last 5 minutes of the third period right now. So, is this going to be another game where the Stars might lose in overtime, but once again, they at least get to overtime? I mean, that's the thing about the Stars, man. They figure out ways to get points, man.
It's kind of funny because remember like 2 years ago, the Stars missed the playoffs and Nashville made it because Nashville had all these overtime losses and Dallas couldn't win an overtime game.
Yeah, I do remember that. All right, so Dallas is your current first place team in the Central Division with 64 points. Winnipeg is at 63 points. So the Predators did the Stars a little bit of a favor last night by beating Winnipeg. But, you know, you got Colorado lurking down there with 55 points. They're 9 points behind Dallas. I don't know if they're able to fully overtake Dallas when it's all said and done. But if they're on a collision course for a Western Conference Finals or a Western Conference playoff series, sign me up for that. I think that's got 7 games written all over it as long as both teams are at full strength. And that's going to be a playoff series to watch right there if that ends up happening.
That'll be an excellent series if everybody's healthy.
All right. So that's kind of how we see the Central Division shaping up. It's in terms of the Predators, I'm going to stick to my guns. Unfortunately, I don't think the Predators are going to make the playoffs. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that this team is just too streaky right now, and that eventually they're going to hit another speed bump in their season, and they're going to lose like another 3 or 4 in a row. And what I feel like right now is the margin for error is so thin for this Predators team that I don't know if they can withstand that, not having a margin for error. So another 4 or 5 game losing streak will probably bury this team, and I unfortunately think that's probably going to happen at some point. I hope I'm wrong, but I actually think the playoff streak ends this year. I don't think they make it in.
I think they're first team in or first team out. So it's going to be very close.
Yeah, it's going to be close. I think in the end, Minnesota finishes ahead of them. I could even see St. Louis charging ahead of them. I know St. Louis is messed up right now, and they are drastically underperforming, and they're 3 points behind the Predators, and they've got an extra game played, so they're behind the Predators right now significantly in the standings. But I could even see St. Louis charging ahead and getting on a hot streak. They've been streaky all year as well. So when it comes to the Predators, man, like I just don't know how sustainable it is for them to live the way they live and win games the way they have to win games. They were winning so many games in 2-1 fashion. Can you keep that up? I don't know. I don't know if they can keep that up, winning these 2-1 games. It's fun while it lasts. I love seeing it. But this might be I feel like this is going to be the year that the streak comes to an end.
Highly probable. Highly probable.
All right. So that's how we see the Central Division wrapping up. Before we move on, we're about to talk about some upcoming contracts of note in the 2023-2024 off seasons coming up. Before we do that, let's tell you about DraftKings. DraftKings is the official sponsor of the Catfish on Ice podcast and also the Hockey Podcast Network. We got the NFL playoffs rolling along. We're down to 4 teams, everybody. 4 NFL teams, 2 conference championship games, and only a few more shots to win big on the playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Not a new customer, you can feel the conference championship thrills with stepped-up game parlays. Take your shot at an even bigger NFL payout and boost your winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. So even if you're not a new user and you're already on DraftKings, people, get in on the stepped-up same-game parlays. You're watching a game. You're into it. You think something's going to happen. You can bet multiple bets along a parlay and get your each leg up to 100% in winnings. So we got the Bengals coming up here against the Kansas City Chiefs, Kyle.
Hey, I'm rolling with Joe Cool.
I'm rolling with Joe Burrow as well. When he smokes that cigar, when he wins, that is like the best.
He has such Joe Namath vibes. I mean, just he does not care, and I love it. And talk about cool under. The man lost 3 of his starting offensive linemen. He should be dead. I mean, just
yeah.
I like the kid. He's got a lot of swagger.
It's fun to watch.
If I hadn't been a Bears fan for my entire life, I would be on that Cincinnati bandwagon.
You can still be on it. You still be on it. It's fine.
Oh, I'm pulling for them. I mean, they're the local team for me. So
yeah. So up in your parts, Kyle, do you see a lot of Bengals fans running around?
A fair few.
They've never won a Super Bowl, man. So it would be cool to see them get their first Super Bowl.
Yes, it would.
I'm pulling for them. I think most people who don't have a dog in the hunt anymore out of these 4 teams, I would venture to say that most people are cheering for the Bengals at this point.
Yeah, I'd say that's a safe bet.
And as long as the Chiefs don't get all of these gift calls, I know Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. He's a generationally great quarterback. But coming from a Titans fan's perspective, the Chiefs get so many gift calls. I mean, the refs literally some games just throw the rule book out and make sure that the Chiefs get every call. And I swear if I see that in this game, and that's the reason why the Bengals lose, I'm going to be upset. But I do think that Joe Burrow is going to prove something to everybody in this AFC Championship game. And then on the NFC side, you got the 49ers going up against the team that took out the Dallas Cowboys. 49ers took out the Dallas Cowboys. And you got one of the best quarterback names of all time, Brock Purdy.
He looks like he's 12.
Is that not the best name ever, though? Is that like scripted? Are we like watching WWF like wrestling or WWE? I guess that's what it's called. WWE wrestling. Brock Purdy is leading the San. I want to see a Brock Purdy versus Joe Burrow Super Bowl. That's what I want to see.
That would be a good game. I just don't think anybody's going to really mess with the Eagles. I'm feeling an Eagles.
Yeah, Eagles are good.
Eagles Cincy Super Bowl is what I'm feeling.
I'd be okay with that. That'd be a good Super Bowl too. Just give me Joe Burrow. Give me Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl, and I'll be good with either NFC team. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 on the conference championships and get 200 in free bets instantly, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See our show notes below for details. If you have a gambling problem, need gambling help, need a gambling crisis, we have numbers you can call to get help with that. All right, so let's move along. Let's start looking ahead here. 2023 offseason and the 2024 offseason. And you know what's crazy, Kyle, and I'm sure you've looked at this over the the past few months. The Preds don't have a lot of big unrestricted free agents coming up in the next 2 years. Not like any big players. All of their core veterans are signed past 2024. They don't have any big unrestricted free agents coming up.
No.
So if you're a rebuilding fan, if you're a fan of this team rebuilding, that's not the news you probably want to hear. That's kind of why I've said over the last couple of months that rebuilding is not that easy right now. If you're the Predators, it's not that easy.
No, not at all.
So you're looking at your unrestricted free agents in 2023. You've got Mark Jankowski, Cole Smith, Mark Borowiecki, Kevin Lankinen, Michael McCarron. Those are your big ones. You've still got some guys on the non-roster who are also unrestricted free agents, including Kiefer Sherwood. But for the most part, those are your main ones who are either on the roster bubble or they start regularly. So Jankowski, Smith, Borowiecki, who's been on IR for a long time. We hope that we see him at some point this year. I know he's doing well. We've seen a lot of social media stuff from Burrow, and we wish him the best. We love Burrow. He does so much for the community. I really, I don't know, man. Let's start with Mark Borowiecki, Kyle. Do you think what do you see happening with him in the offseason?
I think that Mark Borowiecki will retire. I just have a feeling that he's going to retire. He's had 2 really rough health years in a row. He's got 2 really young kids, and you can see how much he cares about those kids. And I just think that he's going to retire.
I could see that happening as well. I mean, he's been through a lot. He first of all, the style of play he plays is very physical and very hard hitting. And so what his body's been through, I mean, I couldn't imagine. And he's been through a lot. And, you know, Mark Borowiecki is one of those just amazing ambassadors for the game where I could see him doing infinitely more for the game once he retires and using his platform and just all the things he does off the ice. Obviously, he does a lot on the ice as well. Like a fully healthy Mark Borowiecki would be a great thing for this Predators team to have right now. But unfortunately, it's just not in the cards and it's not possible right now. But I know that he's going to do great things and continue to do great things off the ice. So if he does retire, you know, all of us Preds fans are going to be following him, and we can't wait to see what he does off the ice and all the things he does for the community.
Yeah, I agree. That's my exact thoughts as well. He's such a good dude, and I want the best for him. And you know, he's taken a couple of really rough head injuries because I mean, you look at the last 2 times he's been out, and I don't want to see anything bad happen to the guy. Is what it comes down to. Because he's just such a good, likable dude. Like, he's a good human being. He's kind of in the mold of Pekka as far as
absolutely.
It's like he's this big, tough defenseman who fights everybody, but he's one of the most universally liked guys in the league. It seems like I've never seen a player interview where they're like, "Yeah, we don't like him." It's always, you know, he's a really good dude. We like him, everything else. So,
yeah. All right, let's shift to another player that Preds fans really get animated about. First of all, it's our first episode since we made our predictions about what would happen. Kyle knows what's coming. I can see his smirk. Yeah. We made our predictions about a new segment. We said what happens first in the last episode last week. Go back and listen to it. It was a lot of fun. And we said what would happen first. Cole Smith scores his first NHL goal or Philip Tomasino gets called up. And I was on the fence, but I took Cole Smith. And I said in the next 10 games. And I think he did it in the next 2 games. So I undersold Cole Smith. I'm so sorry to Cole Smith. If you're listening and watching, he probably doesn't watch this podcast. But if you are, Cole, I'm very sorry. I undersold you. I said 10 games, and you did it in 2 games. So you made me look like an idiot. Kyle, you predicted Tomasino to get called up.
Yeah, I mean, and I think he should thank me because my predictions are so bad that the opposite happened. So I was really helping him out.
You were. And the building didn't catch on fire either. So that was good.
I did say that.
It was awesome, though. In all seriousness, it was really cool to see the team rally around him. I know fans are so irritated that he's starting and they think that there's better players. Okay, that's fine. But, I mean, Kyle, you've talked about this before where we don't really understand all of the hate that Cole Smith gets. I mean, because it'd be one thing if he was a very lazy player and he made lazy mistakes and he didn't bring the energy and he was kind of one of those players where it's like the dude doesn't even bring it. Like he's just out there for no reason. The dude brings it 100% every game. He doesn't have the talent level on offense of a lot of players, but the dude is going to give you the full tank of gas every game. He's going to empty out the fumes and give you everything he's got every game. So it was really cool to see him get that first goal.
That said, I still think it's all right. You put Uso Parsonen off the top line with Duchesne and Forsberg, or Granlund and Forsberg, and you put him with Sissons and Smith, and he still had decent production since he went down. But you know who hasn't? Philip Forsberg has not scored a goal since they took Uso Parsonen off his line. He is now
noteworthy.
5 or 6 games without a goal.
That's noteworthy. That's very noteworthy.
His last goal he scored was off a Parsonen assist and has not scored since. Anyways, we'll get back to the contracts.
No, that's noteworthy. No, that's very noteworthy. Didn't realize it. That's a good point. Look, let's talk about Cole Smith, though. So he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Do you think – because he's not going to be expensive. So do you think the Predators sign him for another minimum 1-year deal in the offseason?
I mean, sign him to a minimum 1-year, 2-way contract so you can send him down to Milwaukee.
I don't know if a 2-way contract is going to be enough to hold him here, though, man. I do think there are a couple teams who will be willing to get in on him, not for a high AAV, I'm saying, but he's going to have some options. I'm not saying he's going to have a ton of options, but he is there's going to be teams out there who see what he does and think, we need a guy like that for our fourth line. So I do think if the Preds really do want to keep him past this season, that they are going to have to negotiate a little bit. I could be wrong.
I wouldn't do it.
I could be wrong, but I could see a team out there. All it takes is one team. We've said this before. All it takes is one team to love a guy. So if there's a team out there that feels kind of a little soft on their fourth line, and they're like, we need a guy like Cole Smith who has a high motor and has a high physical game to his repertoire, then if the Preds aren't if they want, like you said, Kyle, I don't know if I'm getting in a bidding war with anyone to keep Cole Smith. So if there are other teams out there who might want him more, then you let him go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's not a guy you overpay for.
No. All right, I'm thinking minimum 1-year deal. See if he gets even better. Because I will say this about Cole Smith: he's only been in the league for 3 years, and this is really only his second season to really get consistent playing time in this league. And his first 2 seasons in the league, he hardly got any shots on goal. Hardly any. This is his first season in the league where he's actually getting shots on goal. Now, granted, he still hasn't scored but 1 goal, but he's actually opening up his offensive game a little bit more. He had no offensive game before that. So you might take a flyer if you're from the perspective of a Preds front office, like you said, of saying, yeah, we'll give you another minimum 1-year, 2-way contract and give you another year to see if you're going to get even better and show us a little bit more. But you're not getting in a bidding war. No. Okay, what about Lankinen? Let's talk about Kevin Lankinen. We've talked about this before. I don't see any way that the Predators can keep him.
No. He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. He had his 1-year tryout. He's done a lot of good things for this team. We are going to thank him for doing all he's done for this team, and hopefully down the stretch he'll do more for us. But if he makes it to the offseason, if he's not traded, because I'm still leaving that on the table, if he's still on this roster going into the offseason, he will definitely get a very, very well-deserved pay raise from another team.
100%. It's not even really something to even discuss. He's gonna make some money.
So our first 3 players we've brought up is in terms of UFAs in 2023. We have very low confidence are coming back. And Cole Smith, Mark Borowiecki, Kevin Lankinen. What about Mark Jankowski? That's a tough one.
Mark Jankowski has looked good in what times he has actually gotten to play. really don't have a lot negative to say about him. I would re-sign him for a minimum contract. I mean, if he's willing to take that, absolutely give it to him. You need to fill out that roster.
My thing is, I don't know if that's enough to hold on to him. I think he's done enough to maybe get a better deal somewhere else, possibly. He's going to be a player that if you really want him, you're going to have to do a little bidding. You're going to have to do a little bit of negotiating, because I do think that there's going to be teams who would like to have him. You're talking about a guy who's 28 years old, so he's still very much in the prime of his career. He's bounced around the league a little bit, but you know what? You're talking about a guy who has played his role very well for a minimum contract for almost his entire career. And at 28 years old, that's enticing. So I think if the Predators want to hold on to him, they're going to have to bring a little juice to the table. They're going to have to show that they want to keep him. Otherwise, I think Jankowski's gone as well, unless the Predators really want to keep him.
Yeah, I think
he's making $750 this year. He deserves a pay raise, in my opinion, from somebody. Not a big pay raise, but I think he's earned at 28 years old, Jankowski is going to be looking for a more stable, I'm not saying a super long-term deal, but he's going to be looking for something more than a 1 year minimum. Yeah, I think he's going to be looking for more than a 1 year minimum, and I think he's playing for that this year. I think he's showing that to us when he plays this year. He knows in the back of his head, whether it's with the Predators or someone else, he's 28 years old. He's got to prove something, whether it's to the Predators or other teams when he becomes a free agent later this year, that he's worth, investing in a 2-year contract maybe for, like $1 million, $1.5 million a year, something like that. So we'll have to wait and see what he does the rest of this year to raise his value in terms of the Predators front office eyes or whatever. But he's a player that, as long as he continues his play, I would try my best to hold on to him in the offseason.
Yeah, I agree. Very good player, just a solid guy that you're not going to have to worry a whole lot about. He's going to play his role, play it pretty well. Nothing to really complain about there.
And then we got Michael McCarron. He's gone through the player assistance program, and we're, these are things that are way bigger than hockey and way bigger than, what happens on the ice. Michael McCarron, first of all, my family has gone through substance abuse. I know the impacts of what all that means and what he's going through and his private battles that he's going through. Beating that and getting through that program is way more important than anything he could ever do on the ice. So I'm very, very happy to see that he's gotten through that part of the program with the player assistance program. Michael McCarron, just speaking purely on ice, I would love to keep him around in this organization because I think that he is a locker room guy. And you need players like that. You need players like that brings the locker room together. Michael McCarron is a really, really prototypical, strong fourth-line guy you can rely on. And you need guys like that. So I don't know. He cleared waivers. He had to go on waivers after completing the program. He's with Milwaukee now. We'll keep tabs on what he does, and we'll see what happens in the offseason. He could resurface back on the team later this year. We don't know. I do know that this coaching staff has to make sure he's ready to play NHL minutes again. He might not be ready for that right now, but he's shown in the past that he can play on the NHL level and be relied upon to be thrown in for starts when called upon. So we'll have to wait and see.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, I would love to keep him around. I would. I hope that they can keep him in this organization because I have a lot of respect for Michael McCarron and everything he's going through. Restricted free agents. These are a lot of guys that you would expect the Predators to hold on to retain. But we got Cody Glass, Tanner Jeannot, Tommy Novak, Dante Fabro. and Alexander Carrier, all scheduled to be RFAs. Kyle, out of all those guys, is there any player out of that group that you're worried about, or you think they're probably not going to make it to next season?
I think all those guys will be back. There's
even Fabro.
I never said I wanted them all to be back. But yeah, I do believe they'll all be back. That said, I think you throw the Sissons special, as it were, at Tanner Jeannot, try to lock him up for term for a good 6-7 year contract, decent money. I think he adds a lot. He's a lot of the attitude of the team. He fits Nashville well.
And he got a big goal against the Jets last night. He
finally got one.
He finally broke that curse.
I think from what we've seen from Tommy Novak, I think you give him something similar to the deal they gave Ellie Tolvanen. That 2-year prove it, we're going to keep you in the NHL.
I love that. You definitely have to pay Novak something.
Because he's played excellent.
Player. Yeah, he's earned it.
He's like a young Sissons to me, is what he.
Yeah, and Cody Glass isn't going anywhere. We know that.
No.
The team will make sure they get him signed. Dante Fabro is still very much a up in the air type of player. He's still a trade piece, and you're not going to know whether he's going to get traded or not until it happens. He is he's a top trade piece, but if it happens, it's going to happen instantly. And it's going to be closer to the deadline. It's going to be all about where the Predators are at in the standings. And just because the Predators are competing for a playoff spot doesn't mean they're not going to trade guys. They might get in on it where they want to add to their own roster, and they involve Fabro in a trade to get someone else they really want to make their playoff chances better. So I'm thinking that Dante Fabro is still number one on your trade list if you're the Predators. He's the one guy out of your RFAs here that, if I'm a betting man, he's the one that doesn't make it next season on this team out of those guys. Let's look past 2023. Let's go to 2024. It gets a little bit more interesting. You get a couple more core players that fit in. Nino Niederreiter becomes a UFA at that point.
I think that depends 100% on the money.
It absolutely does.
I like Nino. I'd love to keep him around if he's still producing at that age. But if the money ain't right, let him go.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to say this right now, way out at this point, I would say he doesn't re-sign at that point. But I could be wrong. Yakov Trenin becomes a UFA. That's going to be a big one in that offseason.
That's going to be an interesting one because remember, he almost left before.
He will get plenty of offers because that's a guy that keeps trending upward, and he doesn't get nearly enough credit that he's owed.
No,
he really doesn't. I know a lot of the core fan base and the fans that really watch the team closely know how great Yakov Trenin is, but maybe for the casual fans and definitely for the fans outside of the Nashville market who don't follow the Predators closely, Yakov Trenin does not get nearly enough credit around the league that he's probably owed outside of the market. And then also, if you don't get it, you still got Jeannot, Novak, and Carrier who will be unrestricted free agents if they make it past the RFA stage and they're still on this team. That's something that's listed on Puckpedia and Cap Friendly. They can still be UFAs in 2024. So you got to keep an eye on that as well. So just going all the way out. But still, if you really think about it, all of your really core players and the players that fans really get upset about for not producing at a high level, they're with this team for the long haul. You're talking Matt Duchene, Ryan Johansson, Mikael Granlund, Colton Sissons, which if anyone's giving Colton Sissons flack, then they're really not watching very closely. But
we forgot about Carrier.
No, Carrier's he's an RFA this offseason.
Yeah, you got to sign him.
Yeah, he's an RFA. He's also a trade piece possibly.
Yeah,
and I
don't think it happens, but
he's been brought up as a trade piece. But let's shift to that actually. So Kyle, what are you thinking about? It's very unclear if he's going to miss any. He might not miss any time. He's listed as day to day right now per Emma Lingen of the Predators website. But we mentioned it earlier in the episode. He stepped up in the defense of Cody Glass taking that hit against Logan Stanley, who is a brawler and loves to fight for the Winnipeg Jets. And Alexander Carrier took his first fighting major of his career. Is that right?
Yeah.
I appreciate the hustle. I appreciate him going out for a teammate, but wow. If he ends up missing long-term action because of that fight, that's going to really hurt this team because they need him right now.
Yes, they do. And I think it really I worry about what it does to Matthias Ekholm because we saw how much Matthias struggled playing with McDonough at the beginning of the year. They paired him with Fabro for a little bit. Didn't work out so well. But it seems like him and Carrier together is just magical for some reason. Those two guys play together so well. Seems like it lets Ekholm play his best hockey. So,
yeah, I mean, he's day to day right now. That could be anything. They keep these injuries under wrap. I would expect him to definitely not play the next game.
I would say so.
Out of precaution. We won't know until the day of the game. They play New Jersey on Thursday. So tomorrow or tonight, if you're listening to the podcast right now on your drive into work, then we will find out at some point today if Carrier will be able to play in this game, but it doesn't seem very likely at this point. If anything, out of precautionary reasons, you wouldn't play him. So what does that mean? We won't find out until Thursday, but do they call up someone? What would you think? McEwen? Do you think we get McEwen back in?
I would think so. He's a solid guy.
He's kind of your guy that you're shifting back in these moments is Roland McEwen. And he has actually proven that he can step in these moments and play alongside. I'm assuming you would put him alongside Lazan and move Fabro up?
Probably. I think that's
probably what you got to do.
Most likely scenario.
That's probably what you got to do. So, but it's not ideal. This is not an ideal situation, but injuries happen, unfortunately. It sucks that it happens in a situation like that. But the fact that they made him day to day gives me hope that maybe he might just miss a game.
Yeah, that would be really the best case scenario right now. If they can get him back after one, they got the big break coming up.
Yep.
So
if you hold him out of this game against New Jersey, then the Predators have a long break. So
11 days, I think.
Yes. So you absolutely do not play him in this game against New Jersey.
Yeah, I think long run, looking at things, you want him healthy for the season. So why risk an injury now?
Making it worse. We don't know the extent of the injury. All it's called is an upper body injury. So we don't know the extent of it, but why push it? The only way you're playing him on Thursday against the Devils is if it was like one of those situations where it was kind of a scare, but it wasn't as bad as we thought. But I'm thinking it was probably a pretty scary injury in some way. When you hear upper body, it could be anything from a shoulder to a collarbone to a head injury. We don't know. They just say upper body. So you don't mess around with stuff like that. So you rest him. You give Roland McEwen in there. He's already shown he can play, and hopefully, you would think that that Carrier will be ready to go after the All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get it into our NHL quick hitters. We got a couple to throw at you here to round out Catfish on Ice episode 169 with Chad Minton and Kyle Perkins, brought to you by DraftKings, promo code THPN. And we are members of the Hockey Podcast Network. So many great podcasts that you need to be following. Go follow at HockeyPodNet on Twitter to find all your best hockey podcasts. There's so many good ones out there. We have a great family of podcasts that we love being a part of, and we're so thankful for that. And also follow us on Twitter at Catfish Ice. Hit up our YouTube channel if you're watching right now. Go hit that subscribe button below right now and help us out, and comment on all of our live streams. And it makes the show so much better when we have our listeners and our community of watchers get in on the conversation. All right, Bruce Boudreau gets fired by the Vancouver Canucks in a really, really crappy way. I mean, like a really odd way. He just took over the team last year in a really horrible situation, turns the team around, then comes into this season. Yes, the Vancouver Canucks have been a big disappointment in the Western Conference, but the way they let him go, he basically knew he was going to be let go while he was coaching the team that night. Got a big ovation from the crowd. Tears were flowing. It was all over social media. What's kind of your whole takeaway from this, Kyle?
I think he got done dirty. That whole organization right now is an absolute crap show.
Yeah,
it's
a pretty major mess in Vancouver right now. That's another team you're talking about that's never won a Stanley Cup. So think about perspective here, because Preds fans are upset because we haven't won a Stanley Cup yet. We've been around for 23 years or whatever. So it's like, yeah, we get that. Actually, how long have the Predators been around? 24 years?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So it's like, I get it, but the Canucks have been around longer.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't won a Stanley Cup either. They've had a lot of playoff failures. The Preds have done some battles with the Canucks in the early years when Roberto Luongo was in net. But yeah, Canucks fans are upset, but I don't, Bruce Boudreau is one of those coaches where his playoff resume is not very strong as a head coach, but he is loved by his teams. The teams he has coached, those players play hard for him. The fan bases that he's coached for have loved him. I definitely don't think he's done coaching in the NHL. It's a matter of where does he land. Obviously, right now, the Predators aren't looking for a head coach, but just hypothetically speaking, do you think Bruce Boudreau would be an upgrade to John Hines? Hypothetically.
People are going to not like my answer, but I don't really think so.
I think that's fair.
You
can like the guy and think he's a very likable guy and cheer for him, and also say that the Canucks organization did him wrong. But you can also say that if he brought him on as for the Predators right now, obviously hypothetically speaking, that it would be a lateral move.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a downgrade at all.
Lateral. It's a lateral move.
Yeah. I think
obviously right now the Predators are not going to go through a midseason coaching change. That writing is clear. The Predators are 3 points out of a playoff spot. They are not going to fire John Hines. So everyone get this delusion out of your head that John Hines is going anywhere. We talked about it earlier in the season. We did a whole episode about it, talking about, will John Hines make it through the season? And we kind of floated it around and talked about it and argued about it. And you can go back and listen to that episode way back a couple months ago. But like, judging where the team is at right now, there's no way that they're going to let him go during the course of this season. Now, you can, judging by how the rest of the season goes, maybe you can make an argument that something might happen during the offseason. It would have to get really bad, and the team would have to really, really tank here in the last 30, 40-plus games. But John Hines ain't going anywhere anytime soon. But would Bruce Boudreau in a hypothetical situation make this team any better? It all comes down to talent. It comes down to what you have on the roster. Yep. And it comes down to these highly paid players, which are really amazing co-host Rich Howe, who will be back with us soon. He's had to miss another episode tonight, but he will be back. Rich Howe has talked about this. He has really been at the forefront talking about this in previous episodes, everybody. Rich Howe has always said, what are the highly paid players on this team doing? You can hate on John Hines all you want, but he is the coach. The players have to produce. And Rich has always said, what are these guys doing? What are they showing to live up to their contracts? So would Bruce Boudreau magically make these players somehow play up to their contracts? I'm skeptical about that.
I mean, I don't think he's going to be able to make them. It's more of a they've got to want to.
And I get that it's about systems, and Bruce Boudreau does coach a more offensively aggressive system. But you've also got to have the players on your roster to implement that system. Do the Predators have enough offensively talented players to implement a system like that? You can argue maybe, because you're seeing Parsonen and Glass and Novak get integrated into this team. So maybe a more offensively minded coach would be the key to making this team a more higher scoring team. You can argue that, and I would buy into that argument and be open to that. But yeah, I see it as a lateral move. I do think Bruce Boudreau will land somewhere, probably next season or over the offseason. He'll get a job somewhere.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think he's done coaching by any means.
Maybe Columbus. I could see him landing in Columbus. I could see him landing in Anaheim. Anaheim's a mess. Anaheim should have been so much better this year. I know they weren't a Stanley Cup team, but they shouldn't be a last-place team. Columbus, same regard. Shouldn't be a last-place team. With Johnny Gaudreau and all the offseason moves they made, they shouldn't be as bad as they are. So when I think about Bruce Boudreau and where he could possibly land in the offseason, I think Columbus and Anaheim are the top two teams I think of first.
Probably.
We see a lot of coaches in this league who get recycled. Pete DeBoer is a perfect example for the Stars right now. Look what he's doing. Rick Bowness has been recycled a couple times. He leaves Dallas. Dallas fans couldn't wait to get rid of him. He takes over for Winnipeg, and Winnipeg's, top two in the division right now. So you see these recycled coaches all the time in the NHL. So I think if Bruce Boudreau wants to coach again, he'll land somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up with this. Let's get into our favorite commissioner of all of sports, Gary Bettman. Gary Bettman says that nobody tanks in the NHL per TSN. I got some audio here, but before I share the audio with the audience, Kyle, just give me your initial thoughts on that. Do you believe him? Do you think he's true? Do you think that teams don't tank?
No. Gary Bettman, we were talking before we started recording, and you said that he reminded you of a used car salesman. And I think you couldn't give a better description of Gary Bettman. He's the guy that puts an egg in the radiator to get the radiator to not leak and sells you the car that way, or puts stop leak in the oil or something like that. He is that kind of guy. He is just.
My first vehicle was a 2006 Dodge Stratus. Was ugly as sin. It was such an ugly car, but it was my first car, so whatever. I think that Gary Bettman would sell that same car right now like it was a 2020, like brand new, car. Like the dude is definitely has used car salesman vibes for me. Let me pull up this audio real quick. This is from Darren Dreger of TSN. Let me pull up this audio real quick. I'm just going to share a little bit of it. This is from TSN. Do you believe Bettman when he says nobody tanks? This is from Brian Hayes, Jeff O'Neill, and Jamie McClellan, who were joined by TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger. We'll share some audio here.
How was the league, based on who you were talking to, Dregs, how did they respond to Gary Bettman's claim last night that nobody tanks, that tanking doesn't exist in the NHL? Does anyone actually believe that, or do we all know the true answer?
No, I mean, well, you're leading the witness here.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, but I don't want to sound like a guy that beats a drum for Gary Bettman, but I do understand and I appreciate what he's saying, because to a degree I believe it. And not to go down this path again, we all agree. Players are going to play, coaches are going to coach. So it comes down to management and ownership. And yeah, of course there are certain situations, and you can, pretty much identify right now who the teams are in the NHL, where management is being brutally honest with their coaches and their players. We're not giving you any help. This is what it is. And in fact, we're going to move out players. That's the reality. So is that how we define tanking? I guess so, probably. Mm-hmm. I know that there were eyebrows raised when Cole Caulfield last week was, all of a sudden deemed to be, needing of shoulder surgery. But, there's a situation where he probably played 10, maybe less games where it was dicey, where they felt like they were going to have to pull the plug, and then they just decided that they needed to. Well, is it convenient to the Montreal Canadiens? It certainly appears that way to be on the outside. And then from Caulfield's perspective.
Okay, so he's kind of going into like resting players and injuries and the Montreal Canadiens, but I think the important part of what they were saying there is, do teams in front offices, when they know they're way out of it and realistically speaking they have no chance, do they intentionally kind of sabotage the season? Absolutely, that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if I put myself in that position as a front office manager and I was running one of those teams where I saw the writing on the wall and I realized, okay, this season's going nowhere. We have to drastically reshape this roster to be contenders. I'm going to, if I'm in that position, I'm definitely letting my younger players play more. I'm seeing what the future holds. I'm living with the consequences, even if that means a lot of losses and growing pains. And I'm doing everything I can to get draft capital and get draft assets. And if that means landing a top pick of Connor Bedard, then sign me up for it. I don't think teams intentionally tank, and that's what Darren was saying on that clip there. I don't think players go out there and intentionally lose. Hockey players aren't wired that way. They're not going to go out there and intentionally lose a game and throw a game. No one thinks that. So in that regard, I do think Gary Bettman is telling the truth. But do front offices think about it from that perspective? Like, yeah, let's go ahead and kind of throw this season to the wayside and think long-term future. I think that happens as well.
Oh, absolutely. You know they do. They do. It's, come on, Gary. We're not kids. We know better.
Yeah, it's like It's like when Gary Bettman comes out and talks about how those on-screen ads during games look so great and that the fans love them. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you feel like your TV's glitching when you see some of these.
And they start flashing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my, yeah. When they start flashing on the blue line oh God, it's just awful.
And then I know Bettman's been quoted as saying that he thinks he's getting a really positive reception from fans on these on-ice promotional ads when you're watching these games. When it looks like an on-ice glitch on your TV, you want to shake your TV and be like, that's not supposed to be there. But
boo, Gary, boo.
Good old Gary Bettman, the gift that keeps on giving. But yeah. This tanking thing is going to be way at the forefront this year just because of Connor Bedard. And we're gonna keep hearing it because this draft class is loaded. And it's not just Connor Bedard. This draft class is deep. It's way deeper of a draft class than we've seen in the last couple of years, mainly due to the fact that scouts can finally do their jobs. We're getting away from the COVID restrictions, and scouts can actually go out there and see these players play, these prospects play. So we're going to have a way closer look at what we're getting in this year's draft class. So there are teams who are going to be willing to get up there in the draft and pick, and they want to pick in the top 10. They wanted to pick in the top 5. I'm not saying the players on the ice are going to lose on purpose, but front offices absolutely are thinking about that. We're talking about these front offices of teams that are way back in the standings. I don't think the Predators are in that. David Poyle's not thinking that. If anything, David Poyle's thinking about who he can buy at the deadline. I hate to tell all y'all that, but he's going to be a buyer before anything. He ain't selling. Most likely, whether we like it or not. All right, everybody. This has been episode 169 of Catfish on Ice with Chad Minton and Kyle Perkins. It's been a lot of fun. We appreciate you staying up late with us. If you're listening on your drive into work today, Preds play. Who do the Preds play tonight? Tell me, Kyle.
Is it New Jersey?
It's New Jersey. Let's
because they're playing. They're honoring. Never mind. I'm wrong. Forget us anything.
Last game before the All-Star break, everybody. So we have to get this win. Let's end it on a good note. Thank you for listening to episode 169 of Catfish on Ice. We will see you after the All-Star break. Subscribe to the YouTube channel below. Follow us on Twitter at Catfish Ice. Interact with the podcast. Tell us what you're feeling about the Predators right now. We always appreciate the comments. Have a great night. We love y'all. Take care.
See you, everybody.